how would you react? And 85% said it wouldn't bother me a bit. I think that the opposite could be true, and that is that there would be celebrations. And you have even activists in our camp who talk about having rock extraterrestrial concerts to welcome in this age as kind of a falling of the Berlin Wall. And it's more of a birth rather than a death of the old system. And there's always been kind of a bifurcation in exopolitics, which I think Michael and Paula and I were talking about today. That is, do we focus on the short grays and the reptilians and their reported plans for extermination of 2/3 of the human race with the H1N1 virus or some other virus, for which there is some possible evidence to start thinking that way. There's been research informally that has surfaced here that there may be negative extraterrestrial influence behind the chemtrails phenomenon, which I think has been mentioned in some context as possibly carrying a precursor of the H1N1 virus. Or do we concentrate on the positive leading edge of the evidence that there's a strategic alliance of ethical upper dimensional extraterrestrials, the white hats, I think, that people were talking about? I could easily see a scenario if we have a government that has the courage to do it, and I don't know whether the Obama administration that hasn't been able to close Guantanamo, which is a blatant war crime, could do that, but that could spin it to say, look, for national security reasons, we have maintained diplomatic relations, and we've had strategic alliances with the following. And for national security reasons, okay, Bob. For national security reasons, we've had to withhold that from you for 60 years for the following reasons. And there could be plausible reasons there, including military attacks by the Greys. And that I think that a population would be more in relief and celebration rather than reacting violently and with despair.
Alfred, when the University of Exopolitics is finally founded, we're only going to let you teach the graduate courses.
Yeah, I see what's going on right now is this two-edged sword. There's, on the one hand, the perception that anger could be released, and that would obviously be a perception shared by those keeping the secrets. And then, on the other hand, a time of great celebration for the new paradigm. And I see it as a concomitant process that both of the above will be happening, and there will be a period of chaos. It's a time of crisis and opportunity. And a group like this can mediate those discussions and bring it out into the open.
I think Steve's right with his when, what, why kind of point. You know, in my experience of the media, if an announcement was made, almost the very first thing is going to be, what do they look like? You know, can we see a picture? Where do they come from? What's their home look like? We're not going to get into these deeper issues before we've done the very basic tabloid stuff.
I agree with Steve, too. I want to go on record as saying I will not buy into the anger, everybody shooting each other, ridiculous scenario. I think that people are intelligent, and I think there is a third thing that might happen. Some people maybe don't care. Because I have spoken to a group of people that just don't give a darn whether it's announced, it's not announced, it's not going to affect their reality. So it's not the just rejoicing or let's run in the street and kill people and be angry. There's a whole level of people that have told me, frankly, Paula, it doesn't affect me at all.
Well-
And we have to remember those people.
Well, Paula, this probably isn't the right thing to say to you, but maybe this is a good time to quote John Alexander.
Oh, yes, I know, I was gonna say that.
Didn't he say,
Yes.
didn't he end a
Yes.
presentation with all this, talking about disclosure and say, well, Joe Blow, Joe Six-Pack, whatever. His
Doesn't
question
care.
is, does any of this mean I don't have to go to work tomorrow? And
Yeah.
Actually, that's the point.
Yes.
It does. It quite possibly could mean that. And that's actually getting to the root of the matter. What you are talking about is a revolution in a paradigm. It may not mean blood in the streets exactly, but it could quite possibly mean a rebellion in consciousness that results in people becoming co-creators of this world in a conscious way, such that they don't go to work tomorrow, because they realize that one of the things that comes out of UFOs is free energy. And it opens up that Pandora's box, such that the possibilities, because the ETs come from a very advanced scientific future, and that much is obvious, and they're visiting us, they're dealing with our government, the government's been dealing with them. This is the other side of that story, is what does it mean for us? It just might possibly mean, and certainly in the eyes of the powers that be, will disclosure happen? Because what it means is that it's a relinquishing of power on a certain level, because if they are not in complete control of this world, because they don't have the highest technology, the highest intelligence, they're not the man on top anymore, okay? Then who's on top? And that becomes the question. So maybe Joe Sixpack doesn't realize that right off, but maybe he does. Maybe on a subliminal level, he realizes that the controllers are not in control, that the game has changed, that it's thrown wide open, and that all things are suddenly possible, and that we can rework this thing. And we can also take down as John Lennon would say, that there are no countries anymore, that there are no borders anymore, and that we are humans, all of us, we are united, all of us, and that we are one people, and that these aliens who look like us may be our brothers and sisters and fathers and ancestors, whatever you want to say. It changes the entire paradigm in every way. It's like the cards, where does the expansion end? And these are the possibilities. So what I would say is that let's talk about, once you open the door of disclosure, there is a sense in which Pandora's box will open, and there is no limit to the questions that can be asked, and that not just the people like this in this room will be asking those questions, but that average people will be.
I think we need to kind of open or expand the vocabulary a bit, because we're kind of assuming that there's going to be a transition from secrecy or denial to disclosure. And I think actually we're missing an intermediate step, which is openness. That there's going to be a transition from denial to openness. And after we've had openness for a few years, then we'll have disclosure. At the secret UN meetings that I mentioned that occurred in February last year, one of the things that had been agreed upon by the national delegates that were attending was that beginning in 2009, they would begin a process of international openness on these issues. And when you look at what's been happening over this year, it's like, well, what we're seeing is not so much disclosure, what we're seeing is openness. We're seeing files being released. We're seeing the media tackling these issues in an objective way. And I think that is how you will prepare the groundwork for disclosure maybe in 2011, 2012. So I think we need to kind of accept that the people that are moving forward are very rational. They're not going to try to panic people. They're going to try to prepare people through a very well thought out process of releasing more and more stuff, getting universities to deal with these issues in a systematic way.
And there
so
are a
that-
lot of researchers and alternative journalists being allowed to do this work.
Exactly. So I think we're going to have this process of openness, maybe for 2 years, 3 years, accelerate